Good morning and welcome. We are going to begin in just a few minutes. I wanted to allow time for people to join the webinar this morning on Redistricting 101. We're happy to welcome you, the League of Women Voters of Kitsap. I wanted to do a couple of Zoom housekeeping things and clarifications. Because this is a webinar, the audience is muted and invisible, so that when we record Paul's portion of the webinar for people to look at later, the audience, again, will not be visible either in the video or in the audio. Questions that you have can be put in the chat. All the panelists will be able to see the chat, but what we're going to do is we're going to have one person kind of monitor the questions and ask them during the question and answer time rather than during the presentations. Makes for a much smoother presentation, of course. So we have quite a few quite a few people joining, and I expect there will be more throughout the early part of this session, but I don't want to waste any time, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I want to tell everyone that questions can go in the chat and will be answered. I also want to tell everyone that there is a live transcript, which can provide you closed captioning. If you are having trouble hearing, you can click on that little icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, your Zoom toolbar, and open the live transcript for yourself, and it will let you make some adjustments as well about whether you want it certain sizes. That's in the settings part. So without further ado, I'm going to start with the introduction. First of all, I want to say, again, welcome to everyone. The League of Women Voters was founded over 100 years ago in the days of the women's suffrage movement. We just celebrated our 101st anniversary a couple of weeks ago. We envision a democracy where everyone has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League welcomes people of all genders to join. The League is nonpartisan, but we do take positions on issues of public policy after a thorough study of all aspects of a particular topic by a League committee. Another action undertaken by League committees is to conduct an extensive review of a topic and then publish the findings as a report. Studies and reports on many subjects are available on the League of Women Voters of Washington website. It's a very easy website to remember, lwva.org. It's really simple. And these provide excellent resources for anyone seeking more information on topics such as courts or election methods or redistricting. A thorough review of redistricting done by the League of Women Voters of Washington was published in 2017. And that report concludes with suggestions on improving Washington State's redistricting process. The review committee stated that more could be done to improve the quality of input to the process and the degree of public participation, not only in the hearings of the Redistricting Commission, but also throughout the process. The review committee suggests that the League consider working on outreach and training of the public, both before and during the redistricting process, to aid in the quality of public input. So we're really glad here at the League of Women Voters of Kitsap to have you all join us this morning, because that's exactly what we're going to do, is public outreach. This is part of the process of reaching out to the public and providing education about the redistricting process and it's important in the functioning of our democratic republic at both the state and the local level. Our speakers are here today to help you understand how redistricting works in Washington at both the state and local level. I also have a couple of my league colleagues joining us this morning. Maureen Savinsky and Maury Lewis are kind of our tech support, and so they will be handling any problems that we encounter. Susan Griggs is my co-chair for the Speak Up School and also chairs our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And she will be the one reading your questions as you put them in the chat. Paul Andrews is our Kitsap County Auditor. He oversees elections in Kitsap County, as well as document recording, payroll for the county, and other government agencies, county finances, and the county licensing sub-agency. Prior to being elected auditor, Paul spent more than 25 years as an IT professional, managing big data, focusing on modernization, transparency, and accessibility, while safeguarding sensitive records. He has a building design degree, is a graduate of Leadership Kitsap, and is skilled in lean management practices. He and his wife, Carol, are the parents of 2 college-age children and live in Port Orchard. We're going to do a question and answer kind of format. I'm not surprising Paul with any of these. He got a copy of them ahead of time. However, I may have rearranged them a bit. So, I'll keep him on his toes here. The first cluster of questions relates to what elected offices and districts are going to be impacted by the census information. We know the congressional will be and the state legislative district, but what other offices are affected? Paul?
So first, thank you for having me as part of your panel today and sharing this information. So in Kitsap County, it'll be our commissioner districts. They'll be impacted by that. And then internally in the cities that have districts for council members, there will be readjusting of their districts inside of those. The at-large cities won't be impacted by that because they've determined their representation as the whole of the city, so they don't have boundaries that would be readjusted. There'll be adjustments made most likely in the PUD districts as well for those, but primarily it's our commissioner districts here in Kitsap County that will see that impact.
And just to follow up on that process, how are the commissioner lines redrawn? Commissioner district lines redrawn?
Yeah, so that's part of the process. We look at balancing the population in the county. We will get the legislative boundary lines. That's going to give us some information, and then we'll get the census block information. And we've already been looking at projected information. I don't know if you would like me to share my screen. We've been doing some analysis here. Let me pull this up. Finding my my Acrobat here. One second here. We've been looking at things that are going on in the county.
And this actually gets to one of our questions about where is the population shifting. So this will be very helpful.
So can you see my map here that I've got on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what we've done is we've done some comparison analysis looking at the population change between 2010 when we had our last census, and then using the projected numbers that we got from the state through 2019. So we've looked at 2010 compared to 2019. If I scroll down here to the bottom, you'll get an understanding first of looking at my color chart. Anything that is identified as red has had an increase of 50% population in the last 10 years for those census blocks. And if you're familiar with any parts of the county, that are red, you'll understand why you've seen the growth happening in those parts of your of our county already. So we've kind of broke it up, between somewhere about 10% and then 10 to 20, 20 to 50, and then over 50. So now if we go back and look at this map again, you'll see how we've seen growth in Bremerton. We've seen growth in the McCormick Woods area of South Kitsap. We've seen growth up in the central Kitsap corridor, up kind of the Newberry Hill area, and up between Newberry and Anderson. There's been a lot of development happening in there. And then when we get up into North Kitsap, you'll see, the outside of the Paulsbo area, all the way around kind of the downtown core of Paulsbo has seen increases in population. Bainbridge, for the most part, has right in the Winslow area, they've seen a lot of increase, and then the south part of the island has seen some increase. So why we're doing this is because these darker lines that you see in here represent the commissioner district lines, and so we're trying to get an idea ahead of getting this census information delivered to us where we might be seeing changes and where those impacts may be happening, and so. That's kind of why we wanted to get a feel before, with the delays that we're seeing in getting this data. We wanted to have a better understanding of what we might have in front of us. And so, that, like you were talking about, the Bremerton and it being split. We're aware of that. We're also aware that, the Ridgetop area in central Kitsap is an area of interest. It fell into the North Kitsap Commissioners District last time, and we're not sure what all of those numbers look like, but it looks like there's been a significant increase in South Kitsap. We just don't have all of those numbers in yet. If I look at populations by district, just to give you an idea, you can see that in 2010, what the numbers were. North Kitsap, we're estimating, has seen about a 6,000 person increase in population. South Kitsap's seen about 7,000. Central Kitsap's only seen 5. So what that would tell you is that there's going to be North Kitsap most likely is going to become a smaller district for the commissioners to account for the growth. South Kitsap will do the same thing, and then Central Kitsap is going to take up a little bit of that in the middle. So there is going to be some movement in there. We just don't know to what extent that's going to look like yet. And so in looking at these changes, some of the other things that we have to consider is these precincts. Sorry, I'm bouncing around here. We have to consider the precincts. We have limitations on those precincts inside of all of these districts. So at a maximum, we can have 1,500 registered voters in a precinct. And so one of the other analysis that we did was to take a look at I think I just closed that map. We've looked at precincts that have growth that is getting close to the 1,500, because we know that there's going to be some adjustments that are also going to happen in there, so that we can bring that down into a manageable number and stay within what the law has for us for precinct size.
Thank you. That precinct question was one that we had and that also came up in the chat. So we've got some folks very interested in finding out what precinct they're in. I guess the best advice to people who live in different municipalities is to track their districts through their municipality. Is that who determines how those districts are redrawn, like Bremerton or Portland?
Yeah. So Bremerton will be doing their own redistricting of their council districts, and so that'll be something that they'll need to be tracking through the city. I suppose all at large, Bainbridge, right now I know they have wards, and I don't recall how those are all broken up, but they would also be having some adjustments as far as what their wards are going to look like. The map I have up right now, if you can see it, these are those precincts that I was talking about, where anything that is identified in red is 1,350 registered voters or more. So these are areas that we know we need to readjust precinct boundaries to allow us room for growth and to stay within the law. So these are all things that we also have to consider as we're looking at this redistricting, is the impacts of these precincts that are getting large and how we're going to be able to adjust their boundaries, keeping with the rules of not splitting communities and following natural boundaries and all of that. So you can see that again, there's been kind of growth all through the central area of the county. As far as registered voters. So we have a lot to do in this process, and time is of the essence, I suppose, is the best thing we're looking, that we have to say about this right now.
Thank you. We had some questions about the maps.
Okay.
And we understand that the legislative and congressional district boundaries that change, that's the responsibility of the State Redistricting Commission.
Right.
But, and the county, of course, is doing its redistricting look. What role does your office play in these county decisions in terms of creating new maps?
When you're talking about the legislative districts, or
more about the county commissioner districts, and yeah.
Yes. So once we get the legislative information and the census block data, then we'll be able to start looking at what the changes would be in the commissioner districts. 10 years ago, when we did this, the commissioner's office had a special project coordinator, Eric Baker, who headed up that project. This year, we've been consulting with Eric, and it looks like our office is going to be taking the lead on these boundaries. So we'll be involving Eric as far as historical knowledge, because he's been involved with a couple of these. I've been involved with a couple of these redistrictings as well in Kitsap. So I have an advantage here, as well as I know the data quite well. And that's where we do have an advantage over a lot of these other counties that are doing this, is that we've got a good core set of data that helps us build this information. So but we'll be involving the political parties as well as different community groups once we get the data and have a chance to actually see what that looks like and what those numbers, how it actually, what kind of changes we're looking at. Then we'll most likely, after meeting with the groups, look at how the split looks to balance it out the best we can. One of the other considerations, like Alison had said, there's a bunch of different ways to look at this. And so we're trying to look at it from several different angles. And one of the angles we're also looking at is like voter turnout, looking at areas that, may not have as much voter turnout versus having voter turnout, trying to keep balance there as well as one of our interests in how we manage this. So, but these are all things we look at, and then we'll be putting together some balanced options, and then there'll be a public meeting. At least, by law, we have to have at least one. But depending on what these changes actually look like, that'll kind of help determine what we feel our need for public outreach and meetings are going to be. We at this point don't have an idea of what the true impacts are going to be. Everything we've done is just analysis of estimated population data. So this gives us an idea, but it doesn't give us the actual numbers.
And I noticed that it seems like a lot of this data is from 2019. Is some of it older than that, like 2018?
Well, in the population, we just used 2019's estimated population by census block against the 2010 census block population numbers that they actually collected. So we were just using estimates against actual just in those 2 years.
And then I have one rather specific question, and that is, do the county commissioners have a role in drawing the lines, or do they just approve the final maps?
In the past, they don't have a role. They approve the final maps, but the biggest interest there is that these are districts that are their representation, and it affects them, but they don't have a role in the say of how they're so divided, because as Allison pointed out, we have to balance things, and to avoid gerrymandering, this is one of the ways. That's why Eric did it with our office 10 years ago, and this is why there's always been other groups assigned to it, because the boundaries that are the commissioners, everybody has their own interests, and that's why we consult with your group. We'll consult with the political parties, and we'll present what the purpose of each of these options might be, and how we came to these determinations, so as to explain best we can, the numbers we're dealing with and what the end result is. And the commissioners are just part of that process. They get to hear the end result. Clearly, where those commissioners reside, we're not concerned at all about having to having any issues on moving them out of a district or anything. They're all clearly inside of their own districts, so that's not an issue. But those are things that a lot of people that are in districts become concerned with when we start redistricting, is or is this going to be moving them out of a district? And that'll be issues that the cities will have to be dealing with as well.
Mm-hmm. I want to move on to a question about the timeline. With this delay, what's the usual process? Maybe before we even do that, talk a little bit about, there are a lot of steps involved, and in terms of the local information that ultimately gets out to the voters and to the different people. Oh, you're in this district, you can run here. So what's the sort of the process for getting the work completed, and what are some of the steps that have to be done?
Well, so the first thing is that, this is different times, this redistricting, and so typically, the dates where we would have received the data, those have not been met. We're following a Senate bill right now that is hoping to clarify a little better for us what the expectation is for the redistricting, because of the delay that we've seen from the Census Bureau. So right now, we're looking at getting the data by the end of September. That's what they're estimating. Typically, this data would have already been provided to us by the end of March. So we're already that far behind. And then we don't have clear understanding yet as far as when we're going to get the population data to the local districts. There's supposed to be a 45-day window in there, but they haven't clarified what that date's going to be, because right now we still don't know when we're going to get the population data and the geography given to us. So we're still dealing with that, and then we start working down from there. So there's a lot of steps that happen, and there's a lot of laws that say things have to happen within so many days. Our goal at this point is that we are going to have this data, and we will be finalizing in early May, ahead of candidate filing week in May of 22. That the way the timeline is working out, we'll have boundaries defined for those districts at that point. And so the cities would be falling in that same, if they have their district boundaries, they should be around that same timeline as well. I think there is an extension allowed for districts that don't have elections in 22 for their council districts. Their council districts, yes. They have a little bit more time, but I'm unclear on all of that. It's a very moving target right now in what we're trying to get defined as what is going to be acceptable law now, and then in how it's going to play out in the future as far as when we get this data.
Well, you've answered most of our questions about all the impacts on filing week and so forth. I think the best way perhaps to stay informed is to keep your ear to the ground with the county news. Do you want to remind people how they can be informed?
Yeah, so what we're going to do as this progresses and as we get closer to actually getting data, we're going to put together a redistricting webpage on our auditor's website in the elections section. We'll have a full just dedicated towards redistricting, talking about, we'll be sharing some of the maps and some of the things that we've looked at, that we understand. And then as we start developing more data and we get to the point where we have some options and some things that we've considered, we'll be sharing all of that out there. We'll be posting announcements for these public meetings, talking about how the results of our meetings with different groups have been. So you'll be able to go to our website there, and I would always encourage you, if you're a social media user, Facebook, just follow us there, because we do use social media quite a bit. It is a fast way for us to get in touch with everybody in Kitsap that's interested in what's going on. So if you follow our social media account, you'll be able to stay up to date, because as key things happen with redistricting, we're going to be sharing that via social media, pointing you to our website to find out more.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of questions in the chat, Susan. Are you able to pull up a couple that haven't been asked?
There was a question about whether the county auditor is going to help with redistricting school board director boards. Is that under your responsibility, Paul?
The school boards are not. They don't fall under our. We can provide numbers for them if they need assistance, but we're not going to be doing the school board.
Okay, and then the other question that was asked is, are the working population maps available to the public?
Right now, all we have is estimated. This was our own internal analysis ahead of anything official. So we're at this point, we're not posting anything to avoid confusion with anything that actually might be real. We don't want people building their models off of something that we've used projected numbers. We're just doing this for our own internal understanding of what we might be anticipating seeing changes in. Just to help familiarize ourselves, so when we do get the data, we can be more efficient with how we approach it.
And then there was a question in terms of being able to review this information in the future. And in recording this webinar, and so I assume we will also have those slides available for people to be able to see as well, but that's something people would like to be able to look at your slides later.
Oh, okay. We have this redistricting also is outside of everything that we typically deal with in this. We're also dealing with some technology on our end that we're still making decisions on, but because boundaries are going to be moving already for a good part of the county, and we've got some districts that need to be split. We're also looking at doing some renumbering, and we haven't made a final decision on that, but we've upgraded equipment in the elections department, and with that upgrade for ballot maintenance, we were realizing that it might be beneficial to do some renumbering of some areas, and it's something we're looking at, but decisions haven't been made yet. But just to make you aware that there is a chance that we're also going to be looking at renumbering some of the precincts.
I'm going to unmute because there was one interesting piece of information added to those of you who are advocacy activists. The local redistricting deadline bill, there's talk about some of the changes, and that bill, for those of you who follow legislative activities, is 5013. It's a Senate bill. So if you want to follow that and see where it is, you can keep up as fast as the auditor's office can.
Yeah, and Senate Bill 5013 is out of, sorry, I had that up here on my other device. It's actually out of Senate. It's past the chamber. It's in the House right now in committee. And so it's moving along quite well. It cleared the Senate 49-0, so it was fully supported. And we're expecting it's most likely going to be supported equally in the House side as well. But it's one of many bills we're actually following right now. There's there are a lot of different bills. This is the only one really pertinent right now to this conversation and webinar. But it's a very active time for us.
Were there other questions, Susan?
That were all the questions that I have seen at this time, unless I have missed something, and then please put it back into the chat box.
We'll give people a couple of minutes to do that. I certainly appreciate you spending your time with us, all of you members of the audience, but also big thanks to both Paul Andrews, our Kitsap County Auditor, and to Alison McCaffree from the League of Women Voters of Washington. I'd like to close, if you could tell people what you think the most important things for them to do to kind of stay up with the redistricting as it moves forward. What would you say? And if Alison's still on, she can answer as well as Paul.
Follow the state, the redistricting board, and pay attention to what their considerations are being given. Follow, in our case, follow our page, attend public meetings, stay involved with the league, to understand where we're at in looking at this data and where that's going to impact your community as well. And everybody, this is going to impact everybody, but we have laws that say we have to balance things out, and your preference might be to be in a different district as an example, but that's where we start getting into those gerrymandering concerns, is that we have to look at communities and neighborhoods and population balances. And so we're giving it the analytical, this meets all of the requirements. We're trying to take a very neutral approach to how we get there, and but being involved and letting us know that you're where you're at and why is also it's very helpful. We all live and work in this county, but it's also nice to hear directly from the people in those bordering neighborhoods that could be truly affected by this.
Thanks, Paul. Alison?
So I agree with Paul. Follow the state redistricting commission and stay connected to your local auditors, definitely. I have two other asks, which is go on Representable. I put the link in the chat, and just think about your area and your district and what matters to you, and give us a little diagram of what you think your community of interest is. And that's a great way to get your head around what's impactful for you locally and to help us in our statewide efforts. Certainly attend Speak Up School and plan to submit comments both to the Redistricting Commission and to the Auditor's Office and whoever else is the deciding powers at the different local levels, to be active for your community. I mean, everybody thinks my voice is just so little, which it's not, but if all of us add our voices together, then that's a huge amount of information and a huge voice for the communities as a whole.
Thank you, Alison. And thank you to everyone who has participated this morning. I guess the best advice is to stay tuned. We will continue to communicate as a league with all of you. And if you are not currently on our mailing list, there are ways that you can call your email address to our attention in, some people are putting theirs in the chat. But we also invite you to go to our website, and we do keep a lot of our information, not just about upcoming events, but we have recordings of a number of things available. So you can always find more sources both at the League of Women Voters Kitsap, lwvkitsap.org. I think it's an underscore in between or a dash, I forget, but I'll ask Susan to drop our website link in the chat for those of you who want to look at it later in the recording.
So you can go to our website as well, like I said, and we're putting together a fast facts page to just kind of give people an understanding of what we have in Kitsap County for number of registered voters that are active or inactive, how many we've canceled, as far as breakdown of voters by age groups to help give you a better understanding of what the community looks like. And then also looking at how many new registrations we've had by year, just to give you again kind of a feel for how the ebbs and flows. How in the bigger years, like presidential elections, we do so much more registering of voters than in other years. And then we've done some breakdown to show things, like with turnout by elections, so you can kind of see how the elections fluctuate. With the bigger elections versus primaries and special elections. And then also we're tracking things like ballot drop box usage and versus mail usage, just to give you some more information about the statistics that happen around elections. So this is something that we're adding to, and we keep putting more information in there. We give you next dates for elections, things that are going to be happening in the county. So the fast facts page you can find from the auditor's election page. And there's a link to fast facts. So officially, as of 4:30 yesterday afternoon, we do not have an April special election. For anybody that was curious, there was nothing that was brought forward. So our next election is going to be the August primary.
All right, well, thank you. That's actually good to know. Some of us are always looking for what's happening locally. With that, I think we can adjourn this session. As I said, please keep checking all the possible websites and stay engaged. We're very happy to help you find ways to be engaged through the League, whether it's at the Kitsap level or at the Washington state level or even at the national level. Thank you all.